The sky above Sanctuary had not been blue for 3 months. Smoke from burning cities turned everything gray. Fires lit up the horizon at night, and during the day, the sun looked like a dying ember behind thick clouds of ash. Stood on the broken steps of what was once the communication tower. The beautiful building had stood for 800 years. Now half of it was rubble. Glass crunched under her feet as she walked through the destruction. Her silver skin was covered in dust and dried blood. Some of it was hers. Most of it belonged to others. The people had lived on Sanctuary for thousands of years. They were healers. When other species fought wars, they sent doctors. When plagues swept across distant worlds, they sent medicine. They believed that helping others was the highest purpose of life. They had no weapons. They had no warships. They had never needed them. The Dominion did not care about any of this. 3 months ago, the fleet appeared in orbit. They wanted Sanctuary. The planet sat at the center of 3 major trade routes, and they wanted to control all trade in this sector. They gave the one day to surrender their world. The Assembly refused. They believed the Galactic Compact would protect them. They believed other species would not allow such an attack on a peaceful world. They were wrong. The Compact did nothing. Other species sent messages of concern and sympathy. They held meetings. They discussed the situation. But no one sent help. They had signed a membership agreement 200 years ago that said they did not want military protection. They had trusted in peace. Now that trust was killing them. Climbed over a fallen wall and entered the remains of the tower's main room. Equipment lay scattered everywhere. Most of it was destroyed, but she had found one console that still worked. It had taken her team 2 weeks to repair it. Now it was their only hope. Her assistant, a young male named, waited by the console. His hands shook as he worked the controls. He was barely 20 years old. Before the war, he had been studying to become a doctor. Now he spent his nights hiding from patrols and his days searching for survivors in the rubble. "The connection is ready," said. His voice was thin and tired. "But Ambassador, I do not understand. The medical emergency frequency is for disease outbreaks. We are not sick. We are being attacked." Looked at the young man. She saw the fear in his eyes. She saw the same fear in everyone now. They did not know how to fight. They only knew how to heal, and healing could not stop bombs from falling. "The Compact will not send soldiers to help us," said. "Our agreement forbids military aid, but it does not forbid medical aid." "But there is no plague here." "War is a plague," touched the console. "Our people are dying, that is true, and we need help. That is also true. I will not lie in the message. I will simply describe our situation in a way that might bring assistance." Was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. He understood. They were not lying, they were surviving. Activated the broadcast system. The emergency signal would travel through 17 relay stations before reaching Compact Central. From there, it would be sent to any species that had agreed to respond to medical emergencies. She spoke clearly into the transmitter. "This is Ambassador of Sanctuary. We are experiencing a catastrophic medical emergency. Millions are dead. Millions more are dying. We require immediate humanitarian assistance. Please, anyone who hears this message, we need help." She ended the transmission. The console beeped once, confirming that the message had been sent. Looked at her with desperate hope. "Do you think anyone will come?" Did not answer right away. In truth, she did not know. The Galactic Compact had ignored their suffering for 3 months. Why would anyone respond now? But there was one species that always answered medical emergencies. One species that sent help without asking for payment or political favors. The humans of Earth had a strange reputation in the galaxy. They were young. They had only been part of the Compact for 80 years, but they had a habit of showing up whenever someone needed help. The problem was that humans only sent medical ships, hospital vessels with doctors and medicine. Such ships would be destroyed the moment they entered the system. The fleet controlled all of Sanctuary's orbit. Still had to try. Her people were dying. Every day the bombardment killed thousands more. Soon there would be no one left to save. Far away on the edge of the Orion sector, the UNSS Mercy's hand drifted through empty space. It was a patrol ship designed to monitor human trade routes and respond to emergencies. Commander sat in his chair on the bridge, reviewing routine reports. A light flashed on the communications panel. "Sir," Lieutenant Bora said, "we have received a priority signal. Medical emergency on a planet called Sanctuary." Frowned, he knew that name. Sanctuary was there were famous healers. Why would they need medical help? "Show me the sensor data for that system," he ordered. Bora worked her console. A moment later, the main screen displayed the Sanctuary system. What saw made his blood turn cold. Energy signatures filled the display. Weapons fire, orbital bombardment patterns, and at least 80 warships bearing identification codes. "That is not a plague," Bora said quietly. "No," agreed, "it is not." He sat in silence for a long moment. They were not human allies. Earth had no treaty with them, no obligation to help. Sending a hospital ship would be suicide. But someone was calling for help, and was human. He made a decision. "Contact Fleet Admiral, Priority Channel." He took a deep breath. "Tell her we need the third battle group, all of it." Bora stared at him. "Sir, that is 47 warships." "I know." Looked at the screen at the dying world crying out for salvation. "Tell her someone asked for a doctor. We are going to perform surgery." Warlord stood on the command deck of his flagship and watched another city burn. The flames were beautiful against the gray sky. He had conquered 17 worlds in his career, but Sanctuary would be his greatest victory. They were weak. They had no army, no weapons. They did not even try to fight back. Their ships fled like frightened animals whenever his fleet approached. Some of his officers complained that there was no honor in attacking such an enemy. Did not care about honor. He cared about winning. "How many cities remain?" he asked his second-in-command. 3 major population centers, Warlord. We can destroy them within 2 weeks. "Make it 1 week. I want this planet empty before the Compact finishes their next round of discussions." The Galactic Compact had done nothing to stop him. They sent angry messages. They held emergency meetings. They expressed deep concern. But no ships came. No one fought for The Compact was weak, just like themselves. A junior officer approached with a data tablet. "Warlord, we detected an outgoing transmission from the planet's surface 3 days ago. Medical emergency signal." Laughed. "Medical emergency. Are they hopping for doctors to save them?" The signal was sent on compact frequencies. Standard emergency protocols. "Let them call for help. No one will answer. And if some fool sends a hospital ship, we will destroy it." He turned back to watch the burning city. Continue the bombardment. On the surface of Sanctuary had not slept in 4 days. She moved between refugee camps, organizing supplies and caring for the wounded. There was never enough medicine, never enough food, never enough hope. Found her in a makeshift hospital, holding the hand of a dying child. The little girl had been pulled from rubble 2 days ago. Her injuries were too severe. There was nothing the healers could do except ease her passing. "Ambassador," whispered, "the sensors detected something. Ships are coming." Gently released the child's hand and followed outside. The sky was still gray with smoke, but she could see bright streaks of light far above. Ships entering the system. Her heart sank. "How many reinforcements?" "That is the strange thing. They are not coming from space." Checked his portable scanner. "The energy signatures are different, human signatures." Felt her breath catch. "How many?" "I cannot tell. The readings are very large, very strange." Above Sanctuary, Warlord received the same report. His navigation officer sounded confused. Warlord, we are detecting incoming FTL signatures. Multiple contacts. Identification. Unknown. The signature patterns match human vessel designs, but the readings are much larger than any human ship on record. Felt the first small seed of doubt. Humans were not warriors. They were soft creatures who spent their resources helping other species instead of conquering them. They sent hospital ships and food supplies. They did not send battle fleets. How many contacts? The navigation officer checked his screen 3 times before answering. His voice shook slightly. 47, Warlord. Before could respond, space tore open. The darkness between stars split apart with white fire and ships emerged in perfect formation. Warships, battle cruisers, destroyers. And at the center of the formation, a vessel so large that sensors could barely measure it. The UNSS Indomitable was 3 kilometers long. Its hull was covered with weapon systems that they had never seen before. It moved through space with the grace of a predator, surrounded by its fleet like a great beast leading its pack. Fleet Admiral sat in her command chair and studied the tactical display. 83 vessels. Most were heavy cruisers. A few were carriers. The flagship was large but old, its design outdated by at least 50 years. Her communications officer looked at her. Admiral, they are hailing us. They demand to know our intentions. Open a channel, all frequencies, let everyone hear. Straightened her uniform and spoke calmly. Attention vessels, I am Fleet Admiral of the United Nations Space Navy. We received a medical distress call from this system. Our scans show that the population is dying. The cause of death appears to be weapons fire, orbital bombardment, explosive trauma. She paused for a moment. We have diagnosed the problem. They are sick because someone is killing them. We intend to remove the source of the infection. You have 60 seconds to leave this system. After that, we will begin treatment. On his flagship, Warlord stared at the human fleet in disbelief. Then he began to laugh. They are bluffing. Humans do not fight wars for other species. They send medicine and food, not weapons. He turned to his weapons officer. All ships attack formation, destroy them. The fleet moved forward. 83 warships against 47 human vessels. The numbers favored had won battles with worse odds. He did not understand what he was facing. On Sanctuary's surface watched the sky. She could see flashes of light now, bright enough to pierce the smoke clouds. Battle had begun. She had asked for doctors. She had hoped for medicine. Instead, the humans had sent an army. Stood beside her, his face pale. Why would they do this? We are not their allies. We have no treaty with them. Did not have an answer. She only knew that for the first time in 3 months, she felt something other than despair. Above them, the first ship exploded. Admiral watched the tactical display with cold focus. All batteries fire at will. Target their engines first. I want them unable to run. The third battle group unleashed its fury upon the fleet. And the galaxy learned what human compassion truly meant. They had fought many wars. They had conquered dozens of species across 300 years. They believed they understood combat. They believed they knew what war looked like. They were wrong. Lieutenant Commander stood at the tactical station of the Indomitable, her fingers dancing across the controls. She had spent 6 hours studying ship designs before the fleet arrived. She knew where their fuel lines ran. She knew where their ammunition was stored. She knew exactly where to hit them. First volley, she announced, targeting engine systems and fuel storage. The Indomitable's main batteries fired. Beams of superheated energy crossed the void in an instant. They did not aim at the command centers or crew quarters. They struck the weak points, the hidden places, the parts of the ships that would cause the most damage when destroyed. 3 cruisers lost power in the first 10 seconds. 2 more exploded when their fuel reserves ignited. Warlord screamed orders at his crew. This was not how battles worked. Enemies were supposed to attack your strongest points. They were supposed to test your defenses. They were supposed to give you time to respond. The humans gave no time at all. The third battle group moved like a single creature. Each ship knew its role. Each captain understood the plan. They did not fight for glory or personal honor. They fought to win, and they fought to protect. Why? The liaison officer asked. She was a young woman named Sira who had been assigned to observe human military operations years ago. She had never expected to see them used like this. Why do you fight so differently from other species? Did not look away from her console as she answered. Humans learned war the hard way. We spent thousands of years fighting each other. We learned that victory comes from efficiency, not bravery, from planning, not passion. She targeted another vessel. We do not enjoy killing, so we try to end battles as quickly as possible. The battle lasted 47 minutes. When it ended, 23 ships were debris. 19 more drifted without power, their crews alive but helpless. The human fleet had lost 2 destroyers and taken damage to 7 other vessels. But the killing was not the part that shocked the galaxy. Admirals surveyed the field of broken ships. Escape pods floated among the wreckage. Survivors called for help on emergency channels. Any other fleet would leave them to die. They certainly would have done so. Launch rescue operations, ordered. All survivors are to be recovered and given medical treatment. Her first officer commander raised an eyebrow. Admiral, they were trying to commit genocide an hour ago. They were soldiers following orders. Now they are wounded beings who need help. His voice was calm but firm. That is what we do, we help. The rescue ships launched. Human medics in light armor flew between the debris, pulling survivors from broken vessels. The work was dangerous. Some tried to fight. Some tried to run. But the humans did not stop. Was 24 years old. He had joined the Navy to be a combat medic because he wanted to save lives. He had never expected to save the lives of enemies. The escape pod he approached was damaged. Air was leaking from multiple cracks. Inside, he found 2 soldiers. One was dead. The other was badly wounded, bleeding from wounds across his chest and arms. "Human," the soldier growled, "kill me, I will not surrender." "I am not here to accept your surrender," said. He pulled out his medical kit and began treating the wounds. "I am here to stop you from dying." "Why, we are enemies. We killed your allies." Paused. He looked at the soldier with an expression the alien could not understand. "They are not our allies. We have no treaty with them. We came because they asked for help." He returned to his work, carefully sealing a deep cut. "And we are not enemies now. The battle is over. You are just a patient who needs care." The soldier had no response. He simply stared as the human saved his life. On Sanctuary's surface, the first landed at sunset. Ran toward them expecting soldiers, expecting weapons, expecting the cold efficiency she had witnessed from orbit. The doors opened. Doctors walked out. Engineers, aid workers. Crates of food and medicine were unloaded by the dozen. Captain Myra was a tall woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. She approached and offered a container of water. "Ambassador, I am Captain Myra, commander of the Humanitarian Response Team." She gestured at the behind her. "We have medical supplies, emergency shelters, water purification systems, and enough food to feed 50,000 people for a month. Where do you need us?" Took the water with trembling hands. Her mind could not process what was happening. "You came to fight," she whispered, "but now you bring aid." Myra smiled gently. "We came because you called for help. The fighting was necessary to remove the threat. Now the threat is gone and the real work begins." She looked at the ruined city around them. "Your people are suffering. Let us help them heal." Felt tears rolling down her silver cheeks. For 3 months, she had watched her world burn while the galaxy did nothing. Now strangers from a distant planet were offering everything she needed. "I do not understand," she said. "Why would you do this? What do you want from us?" Myra's answer was simple. "Nothing. You asked for help. That is enough." She gently took his arm and guided her toward the medical tents being assembled. "Come, let us take care of your people. That is why we are here." Above them, rescue ships continued pulling survivors from the wreckage. Human doctors treated wounds that human weapons had caused. They did not understand, but they were beginning to learn what humanity truly was. The Galactic Compact emergency session began 3 days after the battle. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on Compact Central. The room was ancient, built 10,000 years ago when the first spacefaring civilizations formed their alliance. It had seen countless debates, treaties, and declarations. It had never seen anything like this. The ambassador, a massive creature named, spoke first. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "We demand immediate sanctions against humanity. Their fleet attacked our vessels without warning. They killed thousands of soldiers. This was an act of war against a sovereign power." The hall erupted in noise. Some species shouted in agreement, others protested. The presiding arbiter, an ancient being from the neutral worlds, called for silence. "The human delegation will respond." Admiral appeared on the central holographic display. She sat in her command chair aboard the Indomitable, still in orbit above Sanctuary. Her face showed no anger, no fear, no regret, only calm certainty. "The ambassador has presented his version of events," she said. "Allow me to present another." The display changed. Images appeared, cities burning, bodies in the streets, children crying in the ruins of their homes, warships firing on civilian targets. 3 months of horror compressed into minutes of evidence. "They are members of this compact," continued. "They have been members for 200 years. During that time, they have sent doctors to heal wounded soldiers on 100 worlds. They have cured plagues that threatened entire species. They have given freely of their knowledge and resources." She paused. 3 months ago, the Dominion attacked there. They bombed cities without warning. They killed millions of civilians. They intended to exterminate an entire species to take control of trade routes. The compact did nothing. Those 4 words hung in the air like a blade. "We held meetings," said. "We issued statements. We expressed concern. While we talked, they died. 17 million dead in 3 months. A civilization that had helped every species in this room was being erased from existence." Then they called for help, a medical emergency signal, the only signal they were permitted to send under their membership agreement. Her voice hardened slightly. "We answered." The ambassador slammed his appendage against his desk. "You answered with warships, with weapons. You killed our soldiers." "Yes," agreed. "We did. They were dying because your soldiers were killing them. We diagnosed the problem. We treated it. Your soldiers were the disease. We removed them." She leaned forward slightly. 23 of your ships were destroyed. 19 were disabled. We recovered every survivor we could find. We treated their wounds. We saved the lives of 6,000 soldiers who were trying to kill us hours before." She let that sink in. "We are not murderers. We do not enjoy killing, but we will not stand by while innocent people die." The chamber was silent. "I ask the compact to consider one question," continued. "What is the purpose of this alliance? We formed the compact to protect each other, to help each other, to ensure that no species faces extinction alone." She looked directly at the representatives of a dozen species who had done nothing while Sanctuary burned. "When the needed protection, where were you?" The vote took 2 hours. 17 species voted to censure the Dominion for aggressive military action against a non-combatant population. 8 species abstained. Only the and 2 of their client states voted against. The ambassador stormed out of the chamber, promising revenge. But the real consequences came later. Within 1 month, The first formal request arrived at Earth's diplomatic headquarters. The Collective, a species of small beings who had been threatened by expansion for decades, asked to establish a humanitarian partnership agreement with humanity. The wording was careful. Legal experts had crafted every phrase, but everyone understood what it meant. If someone attacks us, will you come? Earth's answer was simple, yes. Within 6 months, 11 more species sent similar requests. Some were small civilizations with no military capability. Others were ancient powers who had grown tired of watching the compact fail to protect its members. All of them had seen what happened at Sanctuary. All of them had learned the same lesson. Humans did not just send medicine when you called for help. They sent everything they had. Ambassador traveled to Earth 3 months after the battle. She wanted to thank the humans personally. She wanted to understand why they had done what they did. She met with Fleet Admiral in a small garden outside the naval headquarters. Cherry blossoms drifted in the wind. It was spring on Earth, and the world was coming back to life after winter. "I have studied your history," said. "You have fought many wars among yourselves, terrible wars, wars that killed millions." She looked at with confusion in her eyes. How can a species that has known such violence also show such kindness? Considered the question for a long moment. "Perhaps because we have known violence so well," she said finally. "We understand what it does. We understand the cost. We have buried our children in mass graves. We have watched cities burn. We have seen the worst that intelligent beings can do to each other." She reached out and touched a falling blossom. "That is why we answer when someone calls for help, because we know what happens when no one answers. We have lived through that darkness. We will not let others face it alone." Watched the blossoms fall. She thought about her burning cities, her dead children, her world that had nearly been lost. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Smiled. "You do not need to thank us. You called, we came. That is simply what we do." Above them, the sky was clear and blue. On Sanctuary, reconstruction continued. And across the galaxy, species who had lived in fear began to hope again. Because now they knew help would come. All they had to do was ask. 5 years had passed since the day the sky tore open and salvation arrived. Sanctuary had changed. The burned cities were gone, replaced by new buildings that mixed architecture with human engineering. Where rubble once covered the streets, gardens now grew. Where bodies had lain, children now played. But the scars remained. Memorial parks marked the places where cities had stood before the bombardment. Museums preserved pieces of wreckage and told the stories of those who died. They had survived, but they would never forget. Chancellor walked through the largest memorial garden as the sun rose. She came here every morning to remember, to honor, to remind herself why she now led her people instead of serving as their ambassador. The annual remembrance ceremony would begin in a few hours. Representatives from 30 species would attend. Human delegations had been arriving for 3 days. This year was special. It marked 5 years since the liberation. 5 years since everything changed. She stopped before a statue in the center of the garden. It showed a human soldier carrying a wounded child in his arms. The image had been captured during the chaotic hours after the battle, when human medics rushed through destroyed cities searching for survivors. The soldier's face showed exhaustion and determination. The child's face showed trust. That photograph had spread across the galaxy. It had become a symbol of what humanity represented, not conquerors, not warriors, protectors. "It is a good likeness." Turned. Admiral stood behind her, older now, her hair touched with gray. She had retired from active service 2 years ago, but she always came to Sanctuary for the remembrance ceremony. "I did not expect you until the afternoon," said. "I wanted to see the garden in the morning light." Walked forward and stood beside her old friend. "The reconstruction is remarkable. Your people have rebuilt beautifully." We had help, smiled. Human engineers, human resources, human patience. You did the work, we only provided support. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sun rise over the restored city. The Dominion collapsed last year, said eventually. You heard. Yes, their client species broke away one by one. The silken, the terraformed worlds, nodded slowly. They could not hold their empire together once others knew that help would come. Empires built on fear rarely survive when fear fades. A younger officer approached them. General had taken command of the United Nations Space Navy when retired. He was a quiet man with sharp eyes and a gentle voice. Admiral Chancellor, he bowed respectfully to both. The delegations are assembling. The ceremony will begin soon. Looked at, will you walk with us? Of course. They walked together through the garden, past memorials and monuments, past flowers planted in honor of the dead. Other visitors had begun to arrive. Citizens, human soldiers, representatives from a dozen species who had signed partnership agreements with humanity over the past 5 years. Some in the human government are worried, mentioned as they walked. They say we have become the galaxy's guardians, that we cannot protect everyone who asks. They are right, agreed. We cannot protect everyone. Our fleet is large, but the galaxy is larger. We cannot be everywhere at once. Then what do we do? Stopped walking. She looked at the city around them, at the buildings that had risen from ashes, at the people who had survived because someone answered their call. We do what we can. We answer when someone calls. We help where we are able. She turned to face directly. They did not understand this. The old powers of the compact did not understand it either. They thought our compassion was weakness. They thought because we help others freely, we would never fight for them. She gestured at the rebuilt world around them. They learned differently. The ceremony began at noon. Thousands gathered in the central plaza. Humans, representatives from 30 species, all standing together under a clear blue sky. Chancellor stood at the podium and looked out at the crowd. She saw faces of every color and shape. She saw beings who had traveled across the galaxy to honor this day. She saw hope in their eyes. 5 years ago, my world was dying, she began. Her voice carried across the plaza, transmitted to billions watching on distant planets. We sent a message asking for medicine. We hoped for bandages and doctors. We prayed that someone would hear our cry. She paused. Humans heard us, but they did not send bandages. They sent battleships. They did not send doctors. They sent warriors. The crowd was silent. We learned something that day. We learned that humanity does not simply offer aid. They offer themselves, their strength, their fury, their compassion. Her voice grew stronger. They came not because we had a treaty with them, not because they wanted something from us. They came because we asked for help. That was enough. She looked at the human delegation, at the soldiers and medics and engineers who had saved her world. They expected us to die quietly. The galaxy expected us to disappear without protest. But someone answered our call, and because of that answer we live. She bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect in culture. Thank you for hearing us, for coming, for everything. The applause began slowly, then grew until it echoed across the plaza and the city and the world. Humans and beings from 30 species stood together and celebrated survival. In orbit above Sanctuary, human warships maintained their watch. They would remain there as long as they were needed. Guardians who had been called to protect strangers and had never left. Across the galaxy, on 100 worlds, new communication towers rose toward the sky. New emergency beacons were installed. New signals waited to be sent if darkness ever came again. Because everyone knew now, everyone understood. When you call for help, humanity answers. And they bring whatever you need. Medicine or battleships. Compassion or fury. Whatever it takes to save you. That is the human way. And the galaxy would never forget it.